Frame Raider.
Back in 2005, Hasbro brought the Japanese phenomena known as B-Damans to North America. Inspired by an extension of the Bomberman format, B-Daman blasters were essentially marble shooter toys that were used in conjunction with other toys. That, or specified direct-take battle B-Damans, for a different style of gameplay. You may be wondering, why the funny name? Is this about truly being Daman? No, actually the name B-Daman is derived from the Japanese word for marble, B-Dama. I still think this one phrase in the show's theme, however, used this coincidence to their advantage. So yes, shortly before the toys came to North America, an anime based on the 2002 manga series aired called Battle B-Daman. Looking back, I actually liked it a lot. One thing I always found bizarre growing up was how in the show, the B-Damans were usually 3D models, whereas everything else was a traditional 2D anime style.
Sounds good.
My best guess is that they wanted the figures in the show to look the closest to the marketable products as possible. The show had 2 video game adaptations on the Game Boy Advance, and I'm somewhat familiar with the first one and got close to reviewing it a couple times. So what are B-Damans beyond marble shooters? Well, a couple things. In the context of the B-Daman lore, if you will, they're figures built to be used as pawns for one-on-one tournaments. What I imagine to be the larger appeal for kids growing up, though, was the customization aspect. We'll get into the B-Daman tournament stuff later, but firstly I'd like to discuss that customization. First things first, this is an IBA body, an International B-Daman Association body, if you will. This is your base for building a B-Daman. It has a spring with a pushing handle that, upon placing a marble in the top barrel loader here, will shoot out a marble. While you'd buy B-Damans as pre-established marketable figures, the parts were entirely universal, so with enough parts you could create whatever blaster you wanted. Recognizable faces sell better though, so that's why their creations ended up on our store shelves. I wanted to show off the actual process of building a B-Daman straight out of the packaging, however the specifically North American line is very expensive to get your hands on now. Forget buying secondhand, these things are always being sold new. My theory is that they're so delicate and kinda cheap feeling that parents or even past owners just threw them out rather than selling. A few years ago I actually sold off a lot of my childhood possessions and I was pretty sure I sold off my B-Damans as well. Lo and behold, a recent Christmas visit to mom and dad's and there I find my bin full of old B-Damans. I was beginning to feel like I could never make a video on these things, but since I never actually did sell them, well, now I've got the material, because I bought a lot of this stuff back then. I recall it was quite cheap to buy, and fittingly so because again, they feel cheap. Maybe that's why I wasn't able to sell them years ago? I can't seem to find people actively searching for these, and I assume the asking prices online are trying to cash in on nostalgia. You know, I always found it kind of funny how in the show, when people would battle against each other, their B-Damans breaking was an actual possibility, and if it happened, they acted like it was their Pokemon that just got murdered.
You broke my B-Daman!
I wonder if that idea was insinuating that, hey, your B-Damans might break. It happens. Didn't you see the show? The cheapest thing I can find related to Battle B-Damans on eBay are these 2 playsets that I already have in my bin here. Oh yeah, I remember this thing. I vaguely remember being able to actually sell that somehow, but why the heck was there a B-Daman game of Yahtzee Jr.? So this is the cheapest blaster I could find, and that's a total of $67 for something that used to cost less than $10. Strangely enough, I can find these combo packs of blasters bundled in slightly cheaper, but with the shipping charge it all rounds out to be nearly the same price. Of course, there are other B-Damans I could buy. The Battle B-Daman series may have ended, but I'm pretty sure these toys continued in the market for at least some time. I've seen toys marketed as B-Daman Crossfires, which seem to also have an anime adaptation. Why not replicate the success, I suppose? Alternatively, you could also buy the same line via their Japanese origin, but that's not nearly as nostalgic for me, and that appeal isn't quite worth spending $67 for one blaster in my opinion. Looking into the other lines of B-Daman opens a whole new world of possibility though, it seems. You can even turn your B-Daman into a gun! To demonstrate putting together a Battle B-Daman toy, I have to resort to a channel called Rollout Reviews, who seems to have the only video unboxing and putting together of some of these online. Thanks a bunch for your preservation. One video he has here shows Chrome Zephyr, which was the blaster of choice from who was I guess the second main character of the show, Gray Michael Vincent. Interestingly, the Wikia describes his occupation as gay boy? Don't recall any of those types of themes from the show, but on the top of the box it says that Chrome Zephyr is a control-type B-Daman. It seemed like for some of these, it was relevant to the included pieces like a longer barrel or muzzle, but other times, kind of irrelevant. A lot of these that are listed as power types seem to have little basis behind that classification. I mean, what about the included pieces makes Lightning Con more powerful, you know? I can understand some of the others. A larger loading barrel usually calls the blaster a rapid fire type because you can keep firing for longer. A longer muzzle barrel usually calls the blaster an accuracy type because the directive has a longer linear path to keep it on point. But power? You mean to tell me the plastic pieces included are like maybe bent a certain way to give it more power? Strangely enough, after playing around with the B-Damans myself, it became quite clear to me that some blasters had more power than others, but I couldn't tell you what exactly determined this. Of course, I also have to consider angles, surfaces. Everything's also subject to aging plastic by now, so it's really hard to know for sure what's accurate. Each blaster came with one target pin and one marble. Or wait, that's right, B-Da-Ball. Only use regulation B-Da-Balls with your B-Daman. I guess certain sizes of marbles could destroy your B-Daman, but I remember when I was younger, my mom actually gave me her old collection of marbles to use, and those worked just fine, so I guess just be careful with your selection and it should be okay. So out of the box, you get the components, and it immediately looks like an introduction to being a model hobbyist. You got the launcher piece and spring holder, and of course, the spring. I think at least twice on a car ride home I'd lose this thing under the seat and find it minutes later. Be sure not to lose your springs, as the blasters are useless without them. Then there's the stickers, which you would put on the appropriate pieces because B-Damans were cheap and you couldn't expect molds to be any more than freshly printed plastic. Yeah, that's basically all it was.
I do wonder if the adhesive on these stickers is any good after all these years.
Well, whether this is a response to that or not, some of my B-Daman stickers are being held on with tape, so I assume it was never the greatest to begin with. The instructions were always very simple, nothing to write home about. Once the pieces were out of the plates, it was a pretty 1-2-3 step process. Plop the foot on the torso, plop the arm on the torso. Gee, now as I'm reading this, I'm glad I didn't spend $59 just to show this part. There's more to see from other blasters. Chrome Zephyr is quite a simple build, but these were never complex. Never. The most complex video from rollout reviews on this line might be the Drago Gale blaster, which I know I had, but mine was green, not purple. I guess that one was called Camo Gale? So yeah, this series has a lot of OCs. I guess they expected you to buy Cobalt Blade twice for some reason. Heck yeah, different colored mold and stickers? Oh, see on that blaster it says, now with special blaster B-Da-Ball? At some point they swapped out the glass marbles for plastic ones. You may think this was an idea for cost reduction, and yeah, maybe, but I've actually found the plastic ones shoot further. Probably because the glass ones are a bit heavier, so while the glass marbles may look cooler and be worth ever so slightly more in value, they don't perform as well as plastic. I thought for a bit that if you didn't get one with that label, then you'd be guaranteed a glass one, but as you can see here, this picture of a SonicCon unboxing shows a plastic marble. And there's nothing written on the box, so... Oh yeah, by the way, this is SonicCon. And back to Mr. Drago Gale here. As you can tell, there are different parts. It has both barrel and muzzle attachments, which I think made this one a much better deal than the majority of B-Damans. I mean, look at this guy, he's loaded. He even has rubberized parts that connect to some of his armor. So yes, certain B-Damans were more complex than others, but the process of putting them together was largely the same. And so I just spent the better part of an afternoon putting all my B-Damans back together the best I could. When I was younger, I know that I did do my best to keep them all in one place, but when you're a youngster enjoying his time taking apart and customizing them, well, sometimes things can get lost. The only reason I even decided to look for my B-Damans at my parents' when I was there was because I found this loose barrel piece among some other toys. There's probably still a couple pieces kicking around in unusual places. Alright, after putting them together the best I could, which B-Damans do I still have intact? Completely, one Cobalt Blade. I guess that is somewhat fitting since in the show, Cobalt Blade was the main character Yamato's B-Daman. The rest all have either some missing parts or incorrect parts, though I did try my best to keep it as accurate as I could in this presentation. Here's Helio Breaker, Bakuso, Shield Giga, Knight Cavalry, Wing Ninja, who was demoted to Ninja because I couldn't find his wings, XL Leon, Sonic Con, who was missing a good number of parts, but at least he reminded me that I still need to finish up my Turbo Man doll from the hit Christmas movie Jingle All the Way. Lastly, I've got a Thermal Lance and General Camo. I had a few direct hit battle B-Damans, we'll talk more about these models in a bit. Only one of them is, well, 90% intact, called the Lava Knight DHB, and I believe it was one of the few, or perhaps the only one, that released exclusively in this DHB form, without a standalone blaster to represent it. I have two more DHBs, but couldn't figure out what blaster characters they were meant to represent, so I just threw some remaining pieces I had together to make them presentable, and with what pieces were left afterwards, I threw onto these figures because why not? In a series about customization and multiple original character designs, I think this will be okay. For the remainder of this video, I'm going to put a lot of these to the side. For example, this Turbo Con here falls apart each time I use it. I swear those rubber pieces connecting to plastic molding was never a good idea here. It always manages to fall off somehow. I guess you could say the idea was too ambitious for something so cheap. So far, we know what B-Damans do, but what can you really do with them? Well, that's where the accessories, and more particularly the DHB figures, come into play. First and foremost, let's take a look at the accessories for use with standard blasters. There's nothing keeping you from using DHB blasters on these as well, but generally speaking, the accessories were made for those with standard issue blasters. Now, I don't know how many accessories were made for the Battle B-Damans. I thought I had all of them, but apparently not, since I just found out about a few I never had. No matter. So, I'm gonna be honest, I don't really care enough to try all the wacky game modes associated with these things. I mean, I just pulled out this spin dial here, and I don't know what any of this is referring to. I think some of this stuff is missing as well. Like the Accuracy Inferno skill challenge, that picture shows a jaw, but I didn't find that jaw in my bin with the B-Daman stuff, so I can't even use this properly. I'll do my best to have a little fun with these regardless. I'll be testing these out on the official Tournament Arena stage, which I've just set up here. First, the Accuracy Inferno skill challenge. I have no idea how you'd originally play this since the jaw and whatever this piece of plastic made to look like a flame are missing, but I did find a way to have fun with it. In my box of B-Damans, I happen to own this loop-de-loop, no idea what it came from, but definitely some kind of B-Daman set. Anyways, I put this in front of the thing and tried shooting into it. For most blasters, I couldn't get it to do the full route, but others actually did. Second, the Beast. It's exceedingly basic. These 5 pieces are placed on this plastic yellow dinosaur looking thing. Target the pieces to knock them off, although you probably won't even need to do that. They all hang loosely from the thing, no connection points at all. Simply bumping the thing will knock most of them off anyways. I guess it's something to fool around with. Third, the Beta Goal. Twist a dial to set up this IBA body cutout to move back and forth. Time your shots correctly to get the marbles past him. As you can tell, this thing rarely works right. It'd be generous of me to say it makes 4 full rotations, then gives up. You might think this worked properly years ago, and I think it was slightly more reliable, but I believe this thing always had issues. Fourth, the Exploding Puck. This one actually requires the second player. It's identical to an arena challenge with 2 players, and I'll go over that shortly. All you need to know is that after a period of time from setting it up, it bursts open. Whoever's side it bursts open on loses. Lastly, the Power Alley. If you've ever been to a carnival where you gotta smack a hammer at an impact point to get a high score, well, this is basically that, but in B-Daman form. You can add these sticks on the alley for increased challenge, I guess. I imagine I'm missing something here, but in my testing of this thing, not a single B-Daman managed to knock more than 2 integers tops. Is this intended to be used as an accumulative score? Beyond these accessories, you can also test your skills in the Battle B-Daman Arena. This stage was meant to replicate the feel of being in a real B-Daman tournament with your friends. 1 player at a time could test their skills against target pins, which can conveniently be stuffed with marbles to increase the weight so they're harder to knock over. There are also these blockages you can put in to up the challenge.
Oh!
Alternatively, you and another player could go to battle against each other with the puck, as you try to shoot it from one side of the arena to the other. Should the puck pass your white barrier, the opposite player wins. Or so I assume, because I'm basically just guessing at this point. But now it's time for the real challenge, what separates the boys and the men. Direct hit battle. When it comes to toys like these, there was always one go-to method of play, what you'd assume to be the idea they rolled with in the concept stages. DHB was Battle B-Daman's go-to play, a direct hit battle between you and a friend. With suited up armor, these blasters are ready for combat. And what kind of combat, you may be asking? Hit the front of the opponent's blaster to decommission theirs. It's a simple concept, but an effective one, and pretty fun with the right getup. You also get these holographic sights, which, if I recall correctly, had a larger role in the show. Between you and a friend, they're more cosmetic than anything. Sure, you can use them to theoretically aim at your opponent, but when you're actually playing this with a friend, they're going to be moving to and fro so quickly that the whole thing feels pointless, really. It's best you keep this thing attached, though, since it helps hold together the blaster with the base model and extended marble barrel attachment. Speaking of which, I even have this tub attachment called the DHB Wide Server that lets you run a far larger quantity of marbles without having to pick out more from your pile. That's pretty neat. Probably should get one for your friend as well, unless they're okay with you getting that advantage.
Oh! I've lost.
So in retrospect, that was Battle B-Daman by Hasbro. 15 years ago I fell in love, and at one point they were the first thing I'd look for in the toy aisle as my parents were shopping. That or Bionicles, which would have made for a good video if I didn't sell off most of them already. I still have a few, so maybe that'll work for something smaller in the future? Don't think of this as an advertisement for the Battle B-Daman toys because I couldn't recommend them in the slightest at these prices they sell for now. There is absolutely no reason to go back to these, especially since modern B-Damans are still being sold in stores, I think? At least they're listed on the Walmart website. Specifically, the line is called B-Daman Crossfire, and beyond the name, I know pretty much nothing about it. I did of course manage to find out that the anime adaptation for this exists like it did for Battle B-Daman. I'm not sure if this is at all related to B-Daman Crossfire, but I tried looking into what Japan's doing these days with B-Daman, and it looks like their more recent ones are all incredibly spiky for some reason, so don't buy one for Lil Billy until he's old enough, I guess. Seriously, what the heck is this thing? So thanks for taking this little trip down memory lane with me. I know this isn't the kind of stuff people often come to my channel for, but I had a lot of fun revisiting it. Thanks for watching, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more hijinks in the future, and I'll catch you all in the next video.